Okay, we are live. Um, Let me ask you guys once again, um, just to check to make sure we don't have an echo. We had to restart this broadcast, unfortunately, because we had a little bit of an echo. So it's sounding good on our end right now. But let us know in the chat if you hear anything. So am very excited today to have the one and only Brian Ajhar.
Ajhar.
Ajhar. I never say it right.
That's okay.
It's like I learned it wrong like 20 some odd years ago, and I'm not going to be able to say it right.
I've got it my whole life.
A jar
Ajhar,
a jar of
Ajhar,
peaches.
Ajhar. Yeah, Ajhar.
What kind of
All my
name is
life.
that, by the way?
What nationality?
Yeah.
My grandmother came from Damascus, my father's side, and my mother is from Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So they're not around anymore. My mother, or my father, or my grandmother. So yeah. So that's what I grew up with.
Wow. Cool. And so what we're going to do, excuse me, in this little broadcast that we're going to do is we're going to introduce Brian because he's. Oh, there we go. I just caught up on the chat. He is. Thanks, guys. He's going to teach a class for us at svslearn.com, and we just kind of wanted people to be able to get to know him, and we're gonna embed this video on the class page. But I was going to do kind of a Q&A with Brian. I wanted you guys to know that he's one of my hero illustrators and has been since I was in school, and I would look at his artwork being posted or getting awards in CA magazine and Society of Illustrators magazine. I wonder if I can still post your. No, I used. What is your website? Because I'll just put it in the chat here for people.
Yeah, it's brianajhar.com.
Just.
It's the one that has it's white and has a slideshow in the beginning.
Yeah. See if I've got it here. I'm just gonna pop that in the chat right here. So if you guys that are watching can check out his work, and then we're going to do a little Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for him, you might want to look at his website, and then if you have any direct questions, I can ask him. But I just kind of wanted to know, and these are some things that I actually don't know. I don't even know what year you started. I just remember the first time I ever saw your work was in those illustration annuals, and it was like every year you'd get a bunch in, and we would all just, you were one of the big shots in those in Society of Illustrators and stuff. So when did you start?
I went to school in 1977 to 1980, graduated from Parsons, and I started working at the end of 1980. Took a backpacking trip to Europe, and I went to school in Europe in Paris with Parsons in Paris, and did painting and drawing and classes at the Louvre, which was pretty cool. Wow. That was kind of my graduation gift from my parents. And then I backpacked for 2 months after that.
Wow.
So I was broke and ready to work at that time.
Well, you've done. Can you list some of the magazines you've worked for? The bigger ones, the ones we would recognize.
In my life, literally hundreds of magazines.
Yeah.
I've worked for Newsweek, Time, Sports Illustrated. I've worked for Rolling Stone. I've worked for Business Week, Forbes.
All the big ones.
Worth magazine, anything you can think of. At that time, those were pretty, hot magazines. Yeah. I don't know what magazines are hot these days.
Well, the magazine industry's pretty much dried up, but
yeah, things have changed.
But a lot of those companies that you mentioned still have big online presence, like Forbes and stuff.
Right.
What about a company like advertising work? Who have you worked for?
I worked for, at the time, Young and Rubicam, DDB&O, Saatchi. I worked for, a lot of different agencies.
A lot of the ad agencies, and like what products
Uh,
that can you think of off the top of your head?
cellular phones, cereal
Some of
boxes.
this,
I've done that. Um, uh, a lot of business products, advertising business things.
yeah.
Uh, promoting magazines. I've done work promoting schools.
Uh-huh.
Um, so, I mean, I've touched a lot of areas, which is kind of
And
interesting.
in the last decade, you've been doing more character design work, right?
Ever since CTN evolved, I mean, I had opportunities in the 1990s to when the animation world was in a state of flux, and Toy Story created the new look for successful animation. There was an opportunity for me at that time. I was actually talking to Disney at the time, and I didn't want to make the move, to do it. I look back and I'm thinking, geez, I should have made the move. But life situations. My wife was pregnant. I moved to a new house. And it kind of got in the way of that. And I always wanted to be a book illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of overtook the animation world at that time. So, and in 2009, when CTN Expo started, actually the person that ran CTN Expo invited me to come to CTN. She saw my work, and I was part of that CTN network online. And she said, well, maybe you should try, to take a table, because I've never done that before. I'd never been to Comic-Con as an exhibitor, and that was the first time. And then when I went to CTN Expo, kind of opened up this whole universe again. So, and I did in the past, I have done character design jobs in the 90s and
Mm-hmm.
2000s. I did jobs for Will Vinton before it was Leica.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some other things, TV advertising work. I have done, character design work.
Yeah.
And my work is very character oriented. When I'm doing
Yeah.
editorial
I mean,
work,
like,
advertising work, or basically any direction in my illustration is focused on characters, and characters interacting. And which was strange when you called me up to do the class. And you said, Brian, we have this class we want you to illustrate. It's about perspective. Can you do it? I was thinking to myself, I didn't tell you this, but I was thinking to myself, I don't really know anything about perspective, Will. So, but I found out, you kind of pushed me into it, and I kind of found out, and it helped me evaluate how I do work,
yeah.
which is interesting, because it helps me to look back and analyze what I do.
And the reason why I like you for this class is because I'm thinking back to students that I've had over the past years that have had the problem of, all they do is they get in their sketchbook, or they're on their tablet, and they're drawing character after character after character, and they would get to my class, and my class was focused on composition.
Right.
And I would have them start to try to figure out how to illustrate the whole story, including a background. And some of them would just struggle. They just didn't have a point of departure. And I thought, maybe it's the way that I'm teaching it. And maybe if I get somebody who they'll relate to, who's based mainly in character, and you have beautiful backgrounds in your work, you understand how not to let the background upstage your characters, but at the same time, your character fits beautifully in the background. They work really well together. And I thought, maybe Brian has a way of introducing this, and you do, a totally different method of working, of getting that background married with the character. I had one guy in particular, and I don't want to mention his name, but he would draw these amazing characters, and I feel like in the movie The Sixth Sense, remember The Sixth Sense, where
Mhm.
where Bruce Willis's character feels like he failed the guy who committed suicide and shot him in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
I feel like I failed this student because I could not help him figure out how to integrate that background with his character. So that's really what this class is going to be about. And then Athena's asking, will this eventually be part of the subscription? And it will, but at first we're going to be running it as a live class, and we will probably end up running it multiple times. So if you can't get into it now, when I looked this morning, there were 8 seats that had been sold, and there's 20 seats maximum for that class. So don't worry if you aren't able to get in. Yeah, you're welcome. So anyway, back to your journey. You're recently, I don't know if you can talk about it, but what kind of projects have you been working on recently? I know you just did a big book project. Yeah, I don't talk about it if you can't, but
I mean, the author is posting it all over online, so I guess I could talk about it a little bit.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so that gives me the go ahead to do it. Yeah, it's a chapter book for Disney Book Group. You know, out of California, and it's a chapter book. It's a wraparound cover, full color cover with 40 black and white illustrations inside. They're basically full page vignettes on the left side of the page, and it's going to be an interesting book. I think you can look on Barnes and Noble now, and if you look up Shipwreckers, that's pretty much the heading.
They're doing pre-sales right now.
They are doing something because somebody wrote a review who had an advanced copy, and I'm thinking, how did they get an advanced copy? I don't even know if they printed it yet. You know.
Well, they might send them a digital file or something.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
But I know that they are now. That's a big thing on Amazon is to pre-sell a book before it's even published.
Right. So it's an adventure book, kind of a cross between Indiana Jones and you know, there's funny characters. The kids are funny. It's a boy and his sister, probably around 10, 12 years old, 8 to 12 years old, and they take a cruise ride on the Disney Jungle Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then that's the only thing that has any similarities to the Jungle Cruise. And then they take off on this real life Indiana Jones type of trip, you know, with the captain of the ship. He's kind of a buffoon, kind of a comic relief, kind of a goofy captain, self-centered, and it's a funny book. It's a funny book. It's got a lot of adventures to it. There's all kinds of villains and there's actually zombies in it, and so it kind of takes you on a journey of these kids. I get the impression that this is the first book in potentially a series.
Wow.
But I don't know. I don't know for sure.
So this could be the next, dare I say, series of unfortunate events type of book or something?
It has the quality of I want to see this live, whether it's animated or in a movie. You know, it has that kind of feel to it. It has a movie making quality to it. Yeah, and so that's where it is. You know, the authors.
Hopefully, you get to do book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll see how that works out. But yeah, it's a possibility. And the authors are two guys that have experience, and they've done artwork and storyboard work, and they worked on Phineas and Ferb and a lot of Disney programs.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So they have a background with Disney. So, you know, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, it was exciting. As we were making this class, we got into times where we couldn't work on it because you were knee deep in that book. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool. Let's talk about your characters just a little bit too. Maybe we will do a class on that at some point too, where we just do that. But I was fascinated. We kind of, I wouldn't say we taught the class together, but we were definitely, we recorded it together.
Mm-hmm.
And so watching you work it's just really interesting how the way I would describe the way you come up with the characters, you're constantly asking yourself questions about this character, almost like you're sculpting a character, but you're also like, you're just just asking what more, what is this character trying to say, or what's his motivation, or what's she thinking, or why is she unhappy? And it's can you talk about that a little bit, like how your philosophy on creating characters?
Yeah, I've always been impacted by, I remember when I was a kid watching Disney on television, which aired one time a week. And Walt used to go back behind the scenes and he would interview some of the people that worked on the latest film, animation. And so we'd go back and talk to some of the animators. My favorite guys were Ollie Johnson and Frank Thomas at the time. Mark Davis, too. He was another one. But I remember, asking Ollie Johnson about how he creates characters and what he does to make a character believable. And he had these words, and these words later appeared in books, many books. When I was an adult, I bought books that had the same kind of thing. So, but he talked about, when he's designing a character, when he's trying to make a character believable and have a humanistic quality, he thinks about what the character is thinking and why does he feel that way. And those words always stuck with me. I heard that when I was young, and I remember seeing it on TV. I never really understood it. And when I got older, I started seeing those words in Disney books. The Art of Animation and some of the other Disney books that they have. The Illusion of Life. That's the big famous Disney book that everybody should have. And those words stuck with me. And when I think about designing characters, I'm always playing games when I'm in life, when I'm looking at things. I'm at a cafe, or if I'm in a bar, I'm always looking at characters, and I'm trying to dream up scenarios and use my imagination when characters are interacting. If you walk in and there's two people talking in a heavy conversation at a bar, there's always something going on when the next person who's sitting next to that conversation is overhearing this conversation. Whether these people are in a heated conversation, they want to fight. What's the person, the woman, or the guy next to them thinking, or how is he reacting? And when he reacts to them, how do they react back? So it goes to everything. People walking dogs in the park, come to a meeting place, and the dogs are interacting with each other, and then the people are ignoring each other. And then what's going to happen if they start talking to each other? And what happens with the other people in the park that are walking their dogs? Maybe one dog is angry, maybe one dog is violent, another dog is timid. So, you're trying to see all these peculiar things, the differences between animals, people, environment, and you're looking for stories to tell within an everyday situation. And I try to live that way. I try to think about these things when I'm in any kind of situation. You could be with relatives, and what better characters would there be than relatives? I mean, think about it, right? So, these are kind of things that I touch on a little bit when we're doing the perspective jobs. But what's interesting to me, and I always felt, that I do this, but I never really realized it until I started doing these exercises, that when I'm designing an illustration, my work kind of evolves as the concept evolves as I'm drawing.
Yeah, and that was something that I noticed too, is that you kind of have a way of feeling it out. Whereas everybody has their own method of working. Some people are a little bit more direct, and I think I draw a little bit more like you do, where I'm really feeling out the gesture first, and the initial marks that I make are nothing. They're really ugly. Whereas yours, I wouldn't say yours are. They're you get a really nice grace, and then it ends up in the final. Yeah, all your characters have a lot of life to them.
Right, but also, in the class, I'm going to be doing, I'm doing, actually done 6 different scenarios, with different types of perspective. And the similarity that they have is all the ideas that I used were kind of organic, and they grew into something unexpected as the lesson continued. So there was no preconceived idea in the beginning. I just started drawing, coming up with characters. I had a basic idea of what the scene was going to be, and then it kind of took off and evolved. And it's interesting. It would be interesting for a student or anybody who draws to see the evolution of something happening.
Yeah.
Which when we had a conversation during the process, it was kind of interesting, our banter back and forth.
Yeah.
It was,
I think this is going to really help students a lot. I think that like I was never taught the method that you're using with the grids and things like that, and I think it would have really helped me back in the day. I remember, and I've told this story on my channel here on YouTube before, but I got an assignment one time and had no idea where to start, and I had to do what's the nursery rhyme with the Fiddler's Three? Is that Three Blind Mice? No.
Three Little Pigs?
No, there's 3 fiddlers in it, and then Old King Cole. That's what it was.
Okay.
Old King Cole, and he had his fiddlers. And I ended up checking out a book out of the library, and as I was using it as reference, finally I just copied an illustration in there and turned it in, and I felt horrible. But I didn't have a process. I didn't know where to start.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that you're definitely giving students in here. Another thing that I noticed when you worked is that your backgrounds tend to feel like they're in the same complete style as your characters. So, for instance, some of your pieces, and again, I posted, if you're here right now, you can scroll back on the chat hopefully and see. I posted a link to Brian's website, and I will put that in the show notes. I'll put that in the description after the video ends. But if you look at his website, you'll see what I'm talking about. That it's almost like you have a visual family of work. Like, the way you draw buildings. The piece I'm thinking of particular is that executioner.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the buildings behind are wonky and feel just like the characters. So we didn't really talk about this in the class style because it wasn't a class on style, but how do you feel about that, about making sure that the background kind of matches stylistically?
It's not something I pay attention to, because my work is intuitive. And when I draw characters, it's intuitive. When I do backgrounds, it's intuitive. When there's not an exciting line or a line that I like, I start it again. I don't really like to draw if I feel that I'm tight or overworked.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling from working over the years. I didn't think that way when I was starting in illustration. These are things that you kind of discover as your career moves on, and many jobs over the years, working under the gun, you kind of have a sense of how you work to fine tune, where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make choices that are more definitive in order to finish things. You can't be messing around and redoing and moving around things. You have to really focus on the essence of what you're trying to draw.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of something that's a learned process, that it's after repetition of drawing so many times different things, you tend to be able to invent.
Yeah.
And when you get to a point where you can invent things and not rely so much on photographic reference or realism, or in my case, it's looking at realism, then you're not bringing something that's a realistic object. You're bringing your impression of that object.
That's a good distinction. how long did it take you to get to where you didn't have to rely on photo reference as much?
I mean, I still rely on reference if I need to.
Mhm.
Nobody can make up everything, you know.
Right, right,
So
right.
if you want a particular costume, you know, but you want to be able to take the reference and invent around it. So it's your impression of of what you're looking at.
Right.
So that becomes you then, becomes your drawing, becomes your line, and the way you see it. And believe me, I've had jobs where I had to copy things for advertising, you know. So, I mean, I know that that's not what I do,
Right.
but as an illustrator, you do things, you know, that make money at certain times.
Right, right, right.
So,
Do you feel like I'll make a statement. I feel like my advertising work is the worst work that I've done. That my editorial work was much better work.
right.
What do you think for you?
I've had some good advertising, you know. It really depends on who you're working for, you
Right.
know, what type of art director, what the client's like. I've had jobs in advertising that no one will ever see.
That's what I'm talking
I don't
about.
even think I have the artwork anymore. Just, you know,
That's what
threw
I'm
it
talking
away.
about because the way they used it or
Yeah,
the parameters were such that it's ugly from the beginning.
right. But there were some advertising jobs that, you know, they were perfect, you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, they hired me for what I do and what I do strong.
Yeah.
And, you know, that takes the right type of art director and the right client to want to
Yeah.
do that. And, advertising is different than editorial because there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of hands stirring the pot, you know, so
Right.
you have a lot of input from different angles, and everybody has a different point of view and who they want to appeal to,
Yeah.
right?
Hey, we're not going to go too much longer because we want to put this video on the class page. But the last thing I want to talk about, and then I wanted to answer some questions. There was a few questions in the comments, and if you guys have any more, Brian will answer them for you. But the last thing I really want to talk about is that you're going to be in the class when people turn in their homework. You're going to use your Cintiq monitor to draw over their homework,
Yes,
which is really cool. And to me, this is like a technology that we didn't have, 15, 20 years ago. And now it's becoming more common, especially online with online classes and a
right,
lot of the various offerings of online classes around the world, but also in universities. Sometimes people are able to do that as well. And it's just a really neat thing to get. If you've never had your work, if you've never had a draw over on your work, it's something pretty cool because you can see exactly what you or me as a student would be able to see exactly what you would do differently.
right,
And so that's a really cool thing to be able to have.
right. And in the class, we have three samples of drawovers from prior students that you have.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some of those as well. Okay, so John's asking, how, in your estimation, how different is the path to a chapter book versus the path to a children's book? In other words, if you're trying to find that kind of work, is it similar or is it?
I've done a fair share. I've done probably 6 different chapter books in my life. Out of, I think I've done about 16 books, 17 books. The path is the same. You're
Mhm.
dealing with the same client, basically. Um, they what you need to show is that you're able to communicate a story, not just one illustration,
Right.
and develop characters. Because this job in particular was I think I was among several people that were developing characters in order to get the job. It's the first
So
time that ever happened. That's the
you had to
first time
beat
ever.
out a bunch of other people that wanted to.
I'm pretty sure that he didn't tell. They didn't tell me, but I'm pretty sure that may have happened because
That's
it
usually the
was,
case on those bigger
yeah,
jobs like that. Yeah.
yeah. It was kind of a big big commitment job. Yeah. So, my character survived.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I talked about that in one of my last YouTube videos about how in the beginning. Oh, actually, it was on our podcast. In the beginning, I would be up for a job, and someone like you would get it, and I wouldn't get it. I'd get all excited, and I would tell my wife, and then she'd get all excited, and then finally she started saying, "Hey, don't let me know when you're up for a job, because you never get them, because you suck."
Yeah,
And then
the wife support is so important.
yeah. Well, and then 15 years later, it started switching where I would be up for a job and they're like, "Look, we're looking at other people."
Right.
Then I get it, and I'm like, "Hey, there's other sad people out there right now." And
Yeah.
not that made me happy, but it made me feel good that I was able to turn things around a little bit.
Right.
Here's another question from Serious Case. How do you find a balance between what you want to draw and the mainstream art style that you have to follow to look professional in the eyes of others? So maybe that,
Yeah.
second guessing your initial, what you want to do versus what you think the art director wants or something like that.
Well, is this for a job, or is this for a person that wants to get a career in artwork?
I bet this question would function either way, because if you're trying to develop a portfolio, you're going to be making those same kind of judgment calls of, is this what's going to attract
Right.
a client, or is this purely what I want to do?
Right. The way I would answer that is you try to find things that you want to do and want to draw, and draw things that excite you, things that you can tell stories with. Don't be concerned so much about what's hot now or who's doing it. You can learn from people. There's definitely ways to learn from new people and historical people in the animation or book world. You learn from everything, but ultimately, if you're doing something for a living, you want it to be yours.
Right.
And it's something that's going to be personal to you, and that's what's going to make you special, is something that's personal to you.
Yeah, I was always given the advice that you should draw what makes you the happiest, because that's where your enthusiasm is going to be, and you're going to probably do better work. And so,
right,
not to worry about that.
And what makes you happy and what you find interesting.
Yeah.
And because you're going to be able to communicate if you find something interesting.
Yeah, we self-censor so much in our society in so many different ways, and sometimes that's good, but a lot of times our second guessing isn't allowing our best light to shine.
Right.
So another question here from David: did you have a plan for how your career developed? And I'm kind of thinking as like, and he says as an illustrator, character designer, basically the different types of work you did. Or was it more organic and it just kind of evolved into different ways?
When I got out of school, it was a time where we were coming out of a recession, and there were, people were starting to make money. There was the invention of the computer, and I was getting bombarded with business magazines and computer magazines. There was an abundance of all these magazines. And I didn't do my first book for, I think, 12 years after I started illustration. And to make a long story short, it kind of evolved. I cut my teeth early on, with lots of work doing different types of magazines with really harsh deadlines and incredibly busy schedule. And that kind of evolved into magazines and books, through the 90s. Touches of character design during that period.
Mm-hmm.
More books came later after 9/11 happened. I remember 9/11 happened. That was a big transitional period.
Yeah,
because it seemed like magazines went away, and the invention of the internet kind of took eyeballs away from magazines. And the budgets were cut because of that. And so that's where magazines headed. And then the advertising periodically continued, and books continued, and character design, is a logical direction
Yeah.
and something I'm excited about. But
Yeah.
it kind of grew organically, and there's really no way to predict the way the business is now and the way it's going to be in 20 years. There's no way to predict.
I was talking to Jake this morning about how I thought things would be. You have your perception of what the future is going to be for yourself, and what actually happened. And I'm going to make a timeline of this. But basically, if I timeline my career, I thought once I start as a freelance illustrator, I'm going to basically say, here's the starting point, freelance. And then when you die, here's the ending point of my freelance career. And it's just, that's what I do. And there's so many other projects and other things I've thrown in there that I never envisioned. So you're right. It's the one thing that you can count on is that everything is constantly changing.
Right.
And we don't know what markets are going to emerge.
Right. But, as a student or an artist, you're in control of where you go. You just have to keep growing and changing.
Yeah.
And making sure that you have a broad application to where your possibilities are. You're constantly learning and opening up areas that can use what you do.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? I don't think you do it consciously. I just think you work on your craft.
Yep.
And you do what you love, and things evolve. I mean, I really believe that.
And something you touched on earlier is being smart about what you put in your portfolio,
right?
And what kind of subject matter you cover. And we actually have a video on SVS on like a checklist on the things that we think you should be covering in your portfolio. But one thing that you mentioned, Brian, was having that sequential art. And I'm surprised at how many times I'll have students say, let's say I'm not getting work. I don't know why. I think my work is good enough. I'll look at it and there's no sequential art in there. So they've not demonstrated at all to a potential client that they can handle a book project, but yet they want a book project. And so if you're not showing, you're asking an art director you're asking a publishing company to spend, tens of thousands of dollars on you, but you haven't done the work to prove to them that you can carry a character and have the character look the same from page to page.
Right.
That's a hard thing to learn.
Right. Yeah, it is. It was hard for me to learn, to repeat a character.
Yeah.
And as a character designer, that's one of the things that you have to do.
Yeah.
Be able to draw characters in different angles and same character with various expressions. And
hey, maybe that's a class for you too.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should probably wrap it up. How about one last question? And let's see. How about this one? Let's see. What keeps you motivated in your career? Like, you've done a lot, you've had a lot of accomplishments. Why do you still get up and do it?
Because I'm excited about where it's going. I know that I'm not finished. I don't want to stop where I am. I want to grow my art into something more and something better. And I think if I keep thinking that way, I think jobs will happen, projects will happen.
I mean, when I watch you draw, I can tell you love what you do.
I do. I mean, I feel like I have a connection to what I do, and I feel, even though the job market has changed over the years, I still feel that I can communicate stories.
Yeah.
In all mediums, not just books, not just magazine. and I'm excited about to see where it goes. And, you know, I've always admired, like Ronald Searle is one of my heroes, and he lived to be 91, and I think he was drawing like right up to the last day. I mean, he was constantly producing, I mean, his work, and you know, what a great thing, you know, to be able to
It
grow
really
older,
is.
and have a passion where you're looking forward to every day. You've seen documentaries on Al Hirschfield.
Yeah.
You know, you walk downstairs, you know, he's shuffling along to his barber chair, and you know, he's producing these things every day, and you know, that motivates me. That inspires me.
I think we're so lucky that we're not in a field where we're waiting to be done with the thing that we just can't wait to be done with.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I already told my family I'm not retiring ever. There's no reason to retire.
Right.
I don't want to go paint on a beach, oil paintings. I'm not interested in that. You know, work in a little gallery in Cape Cod. I don't want to do that. You know, painting boats. And,
you know, if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for being willing to do this, and for the class. I know it's going to be great. It's going to start, I believe, January 24th, I think. And whenever it sells out, it sells out. And there again, just to reiterate, there's going to be 20 seats in there. I think there's 12 left right now. There might be fewer. I checked this morning, so I don't know how many have sold by now. But anyway, thank you for agreeing to do the class and for being willing to share your time with us. And we're really looking forward to the class. I'll be in there with Brian when we critique the work and adding my 2 cents, as I love to do. Hopefully,
and I never said this, but thank you, you know, for inviting me and making me part of what you got going there at SVS. I mean, you do great stuff.
Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. This project, I didn't realize, you know, what it was going to become when we started it, but it's really turned out to be a lot of fun, and we look forward to coming in, and we're bringing on a few new people every now and then, and got some new projects in the works, projects for the website and stuff. So
yeah, it's fantastic.
Been a lot of fun. Okay. Good. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, you guys, for your questions and stuff. And that's it. So,
all right. Thanks a lot, Will. Hope to see everybody there.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.